So let me say it plainly. Everybody is not jealous of you. We live in a culture where the moment somebody doesn't treat us the way we think they should, they slight us a little bit, or we lay up in bed and meditate on stuff that we have no business meditating on, we come to the conclusion that they hating on us. They must be jealous. But what if they're not jealous at all? What if it's something deeper? What if there's other reasons behind why people behave the way they behave? So today we're going to be unpacking that. So let's run the intro and then we'll get into it. Hey love, welcome to Awakened Woman 2020, where femininity meets faith, beauty meets boldness, and real world issues are seen through a kingdom lens. I'm Yana, and this is your safe space to grow in godly confidence, walk in truth, and glow with purpose. From spiritual insight to current events, from womanhood to wisdom, we talk about it all, gracefully and unapologetically. So grab your tea, open your heart, and let's journey together. Because being awake in this world means walking in truth, in power, and in purpose. All right, family, salt and light. All right, blessings family. Welcome back, sis. You're tuned into Awakened Woman 2020. I am your host, Yana, and welcome back to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, hello. If you're returning, hey. So like I said, we're going to be talking about something that we need to check ourselves on. And this is labeling everything as jealousy. Because sometimes it's not even jealousy at all. Sometimes it's our own hurt, it's misunderstanding, it's insecurities, it's projection, and even it's our own sensitivity. So let's get real about it. Okay, so if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know I love to journal. If you don't, I'm going to just bring us all up to speed. So I am a big time journaler. Like that is my one method that I love to do. I love to read and I love to write. Writing helps me put all my things out on paper. My husband always tells me that it's not real until you put it on paper. So I'm such a big journaler. And I've been in this space where I'm checking my growth. You know, I always said that I don't want to go anywhere that my character can't keep me. And another thing I've always prayed is that I want to be in such a place where I don't even recognize myself. Like year to year, month to month, I don't want to recognize myself, meaning that I want to grow in such a way that the growth is truly rooted in Yahuah, the Lord Jesus Christ, God. That's where I want to grow. So I document my journey. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast is because I never really took it that serious, if I'll be honest with you. I started this podcast because I wanted to audibly document my growth. I think a lot of times we see people who have become successful and we wonder, wait, how did they get there? And we think that they have it all together without seeing the insecurities and the things that they have to work through. So that's why I started this podcast. And when I look back on journaling, so this week, in the last couple of weeks, I've been going back through my old journals. Conversations I've had with God, conversations I had with myself, things that's transpired in my life, relationships, breakups, of relationships, you name it. I was going through all of my journaling and I realized that, okay, girl, you have read this situation so incorrectly. It was a theme and some patterns that I was reading, not all the time. Sometimes people can really be hating, right? But as I was looking through my old writings, y'all, I could have got underneath a rock. I was so embarrassed at how I misread the situations. Now, granted, these are situations that's happened maybe over like 5 years ago. I'm now in my mid 30s or longer. It was, it hasn't been anything recent, but it allowed me to come to the conclusion that I misread a lot of situations and called a lot of things jealousy and envy when it really wasn't. Also, I am a stay-at-home mom, so y'all, please excuse my children if you hear them yelling in the background. I'm doing the best I can, all right? So what's some root causes? Miscommunication is one of the root causes. I'm going to talk about 4 things that I think are root causes. Number 1 being miscommunication, and this is in no particular order, but miscommunications. Sometimes people don't even realize that they offended you. If you listen to my last podcast, I talked about how I knew I offended her. Well, I don't know if she was offended, but I knew that I didn't treat the young lady. I was kind of cold and distant. Go check out my last podcast about adult fatigue, social fatigue. But sometimes they're just miscommunications that a person may have a million things on their mind. And I don't want to jump too far ahead of my point, but people have a million things on their mind. And if you really think about it, today we're in such a society that's so focused on me. I even know people who put up social media posts, and if their posts don't get a certain amount of likes, they'll take that post down. So everything is about us, and we think that people checking for us when they're really not. So it could be a miscommunication. The other thing is unhealed trauma. Hurt people do hurt people. And I mean, I think if we all can be honest, and that's what this podcast is about, is being vulnerable, being honest, and doing the work. If we look at it, there's been times where you haven't been kind to someone. I haven't been kind to someone, and it had nothing to really do with them, but it had to do with our own unhealed traumas and things that trigger us. And I know that things that I had trauma with or things that, for example, many of you know my story that my dad was locked up the majority of my life, my younger years. So when I would see a girl with her dad or mistreating her dad, it had nothing to do with me being jealous. But if I seen her mistreating her dad, like I kind of got an attitude. And I could think of a situation in particular where I remember I was rude to this girl because I felt like she was being rude to her dad. Like, girl, you have a whole dad that loves you and is treating you like giving the world to you. What's your issue? Right. But that was my issue. It had nothing to do with being jealous. It was more so like, wow, you have like an amazing dad. Now, some of you may say, well, that is jealous. No, it was unhealed trauma. Like what you got going on with your dad don't have nothing to do with me. The third thing could be insecurity. They might not be jealous of you, but struggling with themselves. Maybe that was the last point that I should have made, is like the insecurities. And I remember, and this is all about one of the things that I want to do on my podcast is I don't ever want to point the finger at other people. I kind of want to point the finger at myself. I want to judge my own behavior. The Bible tells us to judge ourselves so that we won't be judged. I judge my own behavior, and I call my behavior to the carpet because I want to fix that. I do not want to go through life and I'm just, can't see the forest for the trees. Like, you have to look at what's going on. But insecurities, that struggling with yourself, struggling with things that you're going through. I remember a time where I had a friend who was just on this glow up journey. She was just glowing up. She was like, girl, let's do this. Let's hold each other accountable in here. Let's do this. Let's do that. And at one point we were on the journey together. But then I got into a point where it was a little snag. Things weren't happening as fast as I wanted them to happen. So I began to feel like I don't really want to talk about that. So she could have felt like, well, you jealous of me. Thank God this is one of my real good sister friends. So I know she didn't feel that way. But let's just say that she did. She could have felt like, well, you're not returning my calls and you're not texting me back because you're jealous of my glow up. But what the truth was is that things weren't happening for me the way as fast as I wanted them to. So I was kind of pulling back a little bit because girl, you on step 3 and I'm still over here on step 1. I'm still trying to get the foundation together. It had nothing to do with me not being happy for her because I made sure that I exhibited happiness for her or ran whatever idea she had going on. I was always there. But at that time, I was feeling insecure about my own plans. And if you look at what's going on in your life and look at what's going on in the situation that you've been in, you can see that there were times when you pull back or shrink back, not out of jealousy or envy, but because you wanted to re-examine your own plans. And it's like, yeah, I want to be there for your plans, but I have to first show up for myself. Okay. And that's something, that's another thing. And what about boundaries? Boundaries is not a word that I remember, some years ago, boundaries was like the phrase, kind of like narcissism is the phrase that everybody's using, like, oh, this person is narcissistic. And I want to do an episode on that because I think we all struggle with some narcissistic traits from time to time. Doesn't mean you're a narcissistic person, but you may struggle with those traits. But boundaries was a word I remember thrown around all the time. But sometimes people pull back, not out of envy, but because where they are in their life. I feel like I'm giving examples too early because all these examples I'm giving should have been for the next point that I was making. But boundaries is that I'm not there yet. So I'm right here and this is the space that I'm operating in. So I think that it's important for us to look at root causes and not just label everything as someone's jealous. There's an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside cannot hurt you. And in James 4:1, it says, what causes fight and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? That means the conflict is often rooted in inner battles, not jealousy. And when I was going through my journal, like I was saying, I realized now in hindsight 2020, and my brain is fully developed now as a mid 30-year-old woman, I'm realizing that when I look at it from the standpoint of not trying to be judgmental, but understanding. So instead of us jumping to the conclusion that they're jealous, maybe we can just check ourselves. Did I understand their actions or what they said? Did they mean it that way? Or is this really about me? A friend of mine always said, count it to my head and not my heart. If I offended you, you know me enough to know that I'm not trying to offend you. And I'm talking about more in particular close-knit relationships, because sometimes, let's be honest, like people out there in the world can be mean, can be hurtful, can, really be hating. And I think it's important to use the spirit of discernment in all situations, because sometimes people do be playing around with you. Okay. So let's just talk about some wisdom steps, some practical steps of wisdom. So before labeling, and I'm breaking this again down into 4 parts. Before labeling, don't rush to call it jealousy. Let's just take a moment. I'm reading this book and it talks about just seeing things in a neutral perspective. Don't always rush to label it. Just calm down, read the situation, and also don't let it don't get stuck there. Don't hang your hat on that point. The second thing is seek clarity. Ask questions before assuming motives. Pray, Lord, what's going on here? Sometimes you got to take a step back and, Lord, what is happening here? Is this about me? And being honest with yourself. I can't stress that part enough. The season that I'm in right now is about honesty, transparency, authenticity. Be real with, like, girl, if you hating, you hating. I'm talking about me. Like, girl, were you hating on on this person? Were you acting out of character? Like, what is going on for real? What made you act that way? And it's okay. Like I said, if we can judge ourselves, like we got to judge that behavior. The third thing is check yourself. Sometimes offense lies in us and not in them. Sometimes we're offended because, I remember growing up, I can tell when somebody was being snappy with me and like being sarcastic or being rude or sassy with me, because that was my personality. So I can understand it and I can read it because that's what I was giving. But sometimes the way that we always, because we know that we got a slick mouth and a smart mouth and we always saying something out of pocket. We think that somebody says something that they being slick and they coming at us sideways when that's really your intentions. That's you projecting onto them. So we have to check ourselves, because sometimes the offense lives in us. And also, don't be a person that's always walking around here offended. Like, everything somebody does offends you. If they don't play the right song, it offends you. If they say that they like this artist instead of that one, it offends you. If they say the color is this, like, everything isn't an offense. It takes so much energy to be an offense and be angry all the time. Even if a person set out to offend me or they offended me, I'm just learning not to harbor that stuff. I have a million other things I'm supposed to be doing. You have a million other things you're supposed to be doing. We can't get caught up on somebody's an offense. And if we can realize that it's more about them than it is us, like, the Bible tells us in Romans 12:3, not to think more highly than we ought to think, but to think soberly. Everything just really isn't about us. People had a bad day. They had so many things going on. I don't know if this is too heavy to bring up, but this is something I came to conclusion of and I thought about one day. Okay, so some of you know that one of my good girlfriends passed away, like going on over 3 years ago. One of my really good girlfriends passed away, and I was just processing everything. And I was talking to her mom, who I'm really still good friends with. My good girlfriend, Jasmine, passed away. I love you. I miss you. Like, more than words can even ever describe. I just miss this friend. Y'all love y'all friends, y'all family, the people that love you, the people that mean something to you. Text them, because when I tell you there is a void from this person not being in my life, I miss her so much. But let me not get emotional. I'll save that for when the camera turns off. The audio turns off. I was talking to her mom, and she was talking about how when she was on her way up there, because she knew that they had to, it was coming to an end. And I was thinking, I put myself in her shoes. Like, what was that drive like? And, she could have been driving slow. She could have been cutting people off. She may not have been paying attention to the road. And people get so like, you cut me off. And then they talking about that all day. Or like, we take things. I'm using this as an analogy to say that when someone shows up in your presence, you don't know what they just came from. You don't know what they're coming to. You don't know if they're stopping here to get gas so they can go make a call or on their way to a funeral. But yet when someone does something, we take it so personal, not realizing that we don't know what that person just came from or what they're going to. Because as my friend's mom had to get in her car, drive up to the hospital, let's see her baby, her firstborn, everything that took place in that room. And then she had to go back down the stairs or the elevator, get back in her car and go back and do real life, right? Like life didn't stop. And I think that sometimes we forget that life is happening to all of us. I remember I had a friend or someone that I used to be in a relationship with that every time that we would stop talking and be cool again and be friends again, the person would always tell me like, I was going through this and I was going through that and you wasn't here for me and you wasn't there for me. And I've always heard this story on and on and on for years. And one day I was like, girl, do you ever realize that do you think that maybe while you're going through something, I'm going through something too? Like life just doesn't revolve around your issues. When you're going through your stuff, that doesn't mean that life stops and I don't have my own issues up over here. Like we're always going through something. Good day, bad day, our kid acting out at school, the principal calling, your manager tried you, your manager didn't give you the day off. Like, I can't tell you that what I would be chill about is something that you should be chill about. Like we all going through stuff. So let me not just get hung up on that one. But the fourth thing is to extend grace. Not every wrong requires a villain. I don't know what she was on today. She seemed a little off. Tomorrow I'll figure out what it is. Okay, I don't know what was that. That was kind of a little odd. But if you care enough, ask the person. Like, and if there's not a space or you don't care enough to ask, then let it roll up off of you. Don't hold on to that. But extend grace. And that is where I am in my life. I just want to extend grace because y'all, I need so much grace. We all need so much grace. When I think about the God that I serve, the Lord Jesus Christ, Yahuah, Yahusha, who I, use the Hebrew words, but for sake of understanding, I'm not about to fall out over the name, even though I prefer the Hebrew name. Hey, the name of Jesus done got me out of a lot of situations now, so I'm not about to, act no type of way about Jesus. I just want to, what was the name that they called you during those times when they needed whatever they was needing, when the lady with the issue of blood, like what was the name that she called on, but that's neither here nor there. That's a different subject. But extending grace, because you know what, y'all, when I look at my life and I look at the things that I've done and said and how I've behaved and how I've hurt people intentionally, how I was offensive, how I was rude, and just all my other behavior that I'm gonna label as just unkind, trifling behavior, I need grace. Even though I feel like I'm finally coming into that space as a woman of God, as a child of God, as a daughter of God, as a wife, as a mother, as an upright woman, a virtuous woman, I still need grace. I still need somebody to look past my fault and see my need. Maybe she just needed a hug today. Maybe she just needed somebody to just listen. Maybe she just needed some space. I worked at a mental health hospital, and I'm going to be closing this out in a second, so just bear with me a moment or two. I worked at a mental health hospital, and I really enjoyed it some nights, and other nights, no thank you. But I remember it was a patient that I was really fond of. I really liked this patient. This patient and I always had a good rapport for the time that he was there. And one day the patient was just acting abnormal. Just behavior was different. And I remember the same methods that I've used in the past, I was trying to use that day. And he snapped on me. I don't want to hear all that right now. And he just snapped on me. And I remember like my feelings was hurt, y'all. I'm not going to lie. Like even though I'm the mental health worker and he's a patient, my feelings were still hurt. I'm like, man, like, I ain't going to talk to him no more. Like I got in my feelings real quick. Like I'm not going to talk to him no more. And I remember honestly, like, I was a little bit distant. Like, I was professional. I did what I was supposed to. I took care of him how I was supposed to, but I didn't go out of my way like I used to be friendly with him or to be kind to him, like that rapport we had. And he came up to me later and was like, hey, like, you're not gonna, you didn't, bring me such and you, like, you usually come in and like bring me this, or coloring. It was something to do with coloring. And I was like, well, I just thought you needed your space. So I, professional, but I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of in my feelings. I was like, yeah, well, I just want to give you space. He was like, no. So what's going on? And he explained what was happening, why he snapped. And I was just like, I felt so bad. Like, here I am taking something personal when this person like was already overwhelmed by some other things going on. And here I am getting all in my feelings. The bottom line is extend some grace. So sis, here's the truth. Everyone is not jealous of you. We can't flatter ourselves. It's actually intellectually lazy to always just immediately throw on that somebody's jealous. Don't let culture trick you into seeing enemies everywhere. Sometimes people act out of hurt. Sometimes it's out of habit. And sometimes it's just life. So that's the episode for today. But hey, sis, if you need a tribe, if this resonated with you, hit that subscribe and step into this sacred sisterhood where we keep it real, raw, and rooted in faith. All right, until the next episode, Salt and Light family. Bye.